It's not often that an actress transcends generations, making an impression so profound that her image becomes timeless. Angie Dickinson is one such rare star. At 93 years old, she remains an icon of elegance, grit, and grace. Born in a time before television even became mainstream, she went on to dominate both the silver screen and TV screens across America. From her breakout role in Rio Bravo to her revolutionary performance in Policewoman, Dickinson didn't just play strong women, she embodied them. But what may astonish many today is how Angie Dickinson continues to captivate even now, well into her 90s. Her recent public sighting sparked shock and awe, not from decline, but from her enduring presence. Without resorting to excessive cosmetic surgery or staged perfection, Angie has aged with authenticity. Her white hair, soft smile, and signature sparkle reveal a woman at peace with her long, impactful life. And that life has seen triumphs, tragedies, passion, pain, and public pressure, all of which shape the Angie we know and revere today. This video explores the remarkable journey of Angie Dickinson, from her humble North Dakota roots to becoming a Hollywood trailblazer. We'll dive deep into her personal battles, her fierce determination, and the moments that made her a household name. And most strikingly, we'll take a fresh look at what makes her legacy so relevant today. At 93, her story remains as powerful and inspiring as ever. Angie Dickinson was born on September 30, 1931, in the small town of Culm, North Dakota. Her father, Leo Henry Brown, was a newspaper publisher and editor, and her mother, Frederica, raised Angie and her siblings with strong Midwestern values rooted in discipline, faith, and integrity. Angie grew up the second of 4 daughters in a traditional German-American household where education and community mattered deeply. Culm was tiny, with less than 1,000 residents. Winters were harsh and summers brief, but it was a place of simple beauty and close-knit families. Angie described her childhood as structured and strict, a contrast to the glitz and glamour that would eventually define her public persona. Though far from the movie studios of California, young Angie was drawn to language, storytelling, and performance, thanks in part to her father's newspaper work. When she was 10, her family moved to Burbank, California, a city that would change everything. The move came at the height of World War II, and for the Browns, it represented both a professional opportunity and a cultural shift. Suddenly, Angie was immersed in a new world of sun, palm trees, and movie studios, a far cry from rural North Dakota. Her exposure to film sets, TV broadcasts, and Hollywood buzz began to light a fire in her imagination. Even then, Angie wasn't thinking about acting. Her mind was set on becoming a writer or journalist, following her father's footsteps. But California had other plans. She graduated from Bellarmine Jefferson High School in Burbank in 1947 and then went on to Glendale Community College. Later, she transferred to Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles, studying business and aiming for a secretarial or writing career. She wasn't chasing fame. In fact, fame seemed far from reach. What no one realized at the time was that Angie had a rare combination: intellect, elegance, and screen-commanding beauty. And soon, Hollywood would notice. Angie's path to fame didn't begin in a casting office. It began with a beauty pageant. In 1953, while still working as a secretary at Lockheed Air Terminal, now the Hollywood Burbank Airport, she entered a local beauty contest almost on a whim. It was the Miss Television pageant, and her striking looks, composed presence, and charm won the judges over. She took home the title and unknowingly opened the door to a career that would span over 5 decades. Winning that pageant brought her to the attention of NBC television executives, which led to minor appearances on variety shows and game shows. At first, it was all novelty. She would introduce segments, read cue cards, or walk onto set in glamorous gowns. But producers saw something special. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was sharp, quick-witted, and camera-friendly. In 1954, Angie made her first real acting debut in a TV episode of Death Valley Days. From there, roles began to snowball. She started appearing in anthology shows like the Pepsi-Cola Playhouse and General Electric Theater, which showcased short, dramatic stories. Though she wasn't yet a star, she was a working actress, and that alone was a major feat in 1950s Hollywood, especially for a woman with no prior industry connections. What separated Angie from other aspiring actresses was her ability to mold herself into different roles: Western heroines, comedic leads, and noir vixens. She quickly proved she wasn't bound to one genre or style. Her voice had gravitas. Her eyes held mystery. And her on-screen presence demanded attention. Hollywood noticed, and studios began lining up to offer her work. By the mid-1950s, Angie Dickinson had fully transitioned from secretary to working actress. Her early television appearances led to roles in classic series like Gunsmoke, The Virginian, Perry Mason, and Wagon Train. Westerns were the most popular genre on TV, and Angie became a staple guest star, often cast as the intelligent, strong-willed love interest or the mysterious stranger who added tension to the story. She stood out not just because of her beauty, but because she gave her characters dimension. Unlike many of her contemporaries who were relegated to one-dimensional damsel roles, Angie brought depth to her performances. Directors began to trust her instincts, and audiences responded to her presence with admiration. In 1956, she earned a spot in Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo, where she starred opposite Hollywood giants like John Wayne and Dean Martin. This role was transformative. As Feathers, a tough and flirtatious gambler, she showed she could hold her own among the biggest names in the business. The chemistry between her and Wayne was electric, and the performance launched her into stardom. Following Rio Bravo, Angie was in high demand. The 1960s were a golden era for her, and television remained her stronghold. She never abandoned film, but she appreciated the creative flexibility and rapid-fire pace of television work. Unlike many actors who looked down on the small screen, Angie embraced it and helped elevate it. At this time, her image as both a serious actress and a sex symbol took shape. She appeared in glossy magazines, graced red carpets, and was courted by top photographers. Yet behind the glamour, she remained grounded. She was known to be friendly with co-stars, professional on set, and fiercely protective of her privacy. Her blend of talent, humility, and sheer magnetism would soon set the stage for her most iconic role, one that would not just define her career, but also break barriers for women on television. As Angie Dickinson transitioned into the late 1950s and early 1960s, she was no longer just a promising actress, she had arrived. Her breakout in Rio Bravo, 1959, had elevated her reputation, and directors began to see her as more than a supporting player. The success of Rio Bravo brought Angie into the orbit of some of Hollywood's biggest icons, and she took full advantage of the opportunity. In Ocean's 11, 1960, Angie played the wife of Danny Ocean, Frank Sinatra. Though her role was limited in screen time, her presence had impact. Working with members of the Rat Pack, Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, was a turning point. Her name became linked with the elite class of show business royalty. And more importantly, she proved she could stand out even among legends. Throughout the early 1960s, Angie headlined in a string of genre-defining films. These included thrillers like The Killers, 1964, a stylish and violent noir in which she starred opposite Lee Marvin and Ronald Reagan, in his last acting role before entering politics. The film was a remake of the 1946 classic, but Angie brought a modern sexual confidence and icy danger to her role, traits rarely given to female leads at the time. In Jessica, 1962, she played the titular character, a midwife in a small Italian village filled with jealous wives. The performance was playful and sharp, with Angie flexing her comedic timing and sensual energy. She was becoming known for her duality, feminine charm mixed with steely strength. By the mid-60s, Angie had crafted a niche as a leading lady who could play both soft and hard, glamorous and grounded. Her on-screen image was never passive. Directors loved working with her because she brought intelligence and edge to even the most straightforward roles. This was a critical time in Angie's career, not because she was at her most famous, but because she was doing her best work. She wasn't just seen as beautiful, she was respected as a real actress. While Angie's professional work was blossoming, her personal life was drawing attention as well, especially because of her proximity to Hollywood's most exclusive inner circle, the Rat Pack. Her role in Ocean's 11 brought her into close contact with Frank Sinatra, and soon rumors of a romantic relationship began to swirl. Angie would always deny that they had a long-term affair, insisting they were just close friends. Angie Dickinson's career-defining role came in 1974 when she was cast as Sergeant Suzanne Pepper Anderson in the groundbreaking TV drama Policewoman. The show ran for 4 seasons and became a cultural phenomenon, not just for its action and drama, but because it was the first network television series to star a woman as a police officer in a leading role. Until then, women in crime dramas had been relegated to side characters: victims, secretaries, wives, or assistants. Policewoman flipped that convention on its head. Angie's character was tough, smart, emotionally complex, and professional. She didn't use sex appeal as a gimmick, although her striking looks certainly caught attention. She used her brain, instincts, and resolve to solve crimes and take down criminals. The show tackled controversial themes: domestic violence, rape, drug addiction, and organized crime, all through the lens of a female officer working in a male-dominated world. While it retained the style of a 1970s procedural, it had unexpected depth. Audiences responded immediately. Policewoman became a ratings hit, making Angie a household name once again. She won a Golden Globe in 1975 and received multiple Emmy nominations. Merchandise followed, trading cards, lunchboxes, even Halloween costumes. Pepper Anderson was a pop culture icon. But behind the scenes, Angie was carrying a heavy load. Filming an hour-long drama every week was grueling, often involving 16-hour days. She later said the stress was enormous. "I was exhausted. It was a huge responsibility. But I also knew what it meant, for women, for the industry." Despite her success, Angie still dealt with criticism. Some dismissed her as a sex symbol in a badge. Others resented her breaking into a space traditionally held by men. But she stayed focused, believing in the show's message. Over time, Policewoman inspired real-life change. Police departments reported a spike in female applications. Women across the country wrote letters to Angie, thanking her for giving them a role model. They saw themselves in Pepper Anderson. With this show, Angie did more than act, she empowered. Following the success of Policewoman, Angie Dickinson entered the 1980s with renewed celebrity and a new sense of purpose. She began selecting roles that pushed the boundaries of what audiences expected from her. In 1981, she starred in Brian De Palma's erotic thriller Dressed to Kill, a controversial and stylish film in which Angie played Kate Miller, a frustrated housewife who becomes entangled in a deadly mystery. The film was shocking for its time, featuring explicit scenes and a twist-filled plot. Angie's performance was hailed as brave, layered, and emotionally raw. Though the film stirred controversy, it also introduced her to a new generation of moviegoers. She was no longer just the elegant Pepper Anderson or the classic 1960s film beauty. She was a risk-taker, willing to explore darker and more nuanced characters. Angie's willingness to portray vulnerability and sexuality without shame set her apart. She didn't flinch from scenes that required courage or complexity. In Big Bad Mama, 1974, she had already played a sexually liberated gun-wielding mother on the run from the law. These roles, once considered B-movie material, became cult classics, largely because of Angie's commitment to them. By the late 1980s, she began stepping back from the spotlight. The industry was changing, and so was Angie. She took fewer roles, mostly TV movies and occasional cameos. But her influence never faded. Younger actresses who took on strong female roles, like Sharon Stone, Geena Davis and Jodie Foster, frequently cited Angie Dickinson as a trailblazer. What defined Angie's legacy wasn't just her beauty or charisma, it was her range. She could move seamlessly from mainstream drama to provocative thrillers. She was equally comfortable in a shootout and a courtroom, in lingerie or a police uniform. She gave permission for women to be complex. And that, more than anything, is why her impact still lingers. While many admired Angie Dickinson for her beauty, her confidence, and her strength, few understood the private pain she endured behind closed doors, particularly surrounding her only child, Leah Nikki Bacharach. Nikki, born prematurely in 1966, struggled with chronic health issues from the very beginning. Doctors soon diagnosed her with Asperger's syndrome, long before the public had a real understanding of what it meant. The condition affected Nikki's ability to communicate and adapt socially, and she lived with emotional and cognitive challenges throughout her life. For Angie, motherhood became her most sacred and heartbreaking role. She once said in an interview, "Being Nikki's mother was the most important thing in my life." Angie put her career on hold, turned down major roles, and stayed close to home in order to provide the love, care, and support her daughter needed. Despite her fame, she chose to live quietly, away from the press, in order to shield Nikki from the public eye. Her marriage to Burt Bacharach began to crumble under the weight of this emotional burden. Burt struggled with Nikki's condition and reportedly found it difficult to engage as a parent. Their disagreements over her care, therapy, and future took a toll. In 1981, after 15 years of marriage, they divorced, but Angie never stopped advocating for her daughter. In 2007, tragedy struck. Nikki, at the age of 40, died by suicide at her apartment in California. She had struggled for years with depression and isolation, despite Angie's unwavering love and support. It was a devastating loss that shattered the actress. Angie remained mostly private about the details, but in rare interviews, she admitted the loss never fully healed. "I think about her every day," she said in a quiet, tearful reflection. "There's a part of me that left this world when she did." The loss gave new depth to Angie's strength. While others marveled at her beauty and fame, those closest to her understood she had survived the deepest kind of grief. And yet, she continued on, aging with resilience and dignity. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Angie Dickinson had slowly begun to retreat from Hollywood's spotlight. She had achieved immense success in both film and television, broken barriers for women on screen, and carved out an indelible space in entertainment history. Now she wanted peace and privacy. Her decision wasn't driven by scandal or lack of roles. In fact, she continued to receive offers well into the 2000s. But Angie was selective. She appeared in a few TV movies, including Hollywood Wives and Evening Shade, and made a brief cameo in the 2001 remake of Ocean's 11, a nod to her iconic role in the original. But her passion for acting was no longer at the forefront of her life. "I had done enough," she once said. "I wanted to live my life, not just play it." She preferred spending quiet days at home in Beverly Hills, enjoying reading, gardening, cooking, and reflecting on a life that had been anything but ordinary. She was often invited to red carpet events and award ceremonies, but she rarely attended. She disliked the pressure to look a certain way, and she refused to conform to the Hollywood standard of anti-aging treatments and cosmetic enhancements. Angie Dickinson chose to age naturally, embracing her wrinkles, her white hair, and her changing body. "I've earned every year," she told a journalist in 2015. "Why should I hide it?" The public, used to seeing older stars transformed by surgery or filters, was stunned when Angie was occasionally photographed in public. Elegant, silver-haired, and graceful. She looked like herself, not a version of what the world wanted her to be. And that only made her more respected. At 93, Angie Dickinson is a vision of natural aging and enduring spirit. She lives quietly in her Los Angeles home, away from the chaos of celebrity culture. She doesn't post selfies. She doesn't host podcasts. She doesn't chase relevance, yet somehow, she remains incredibly relevant. Every so often, paparazzi photos surface of her out in public, at a grocery store, taking a stroll, or attending a private event. And the reaction is always the same: is that really Angie Dickinson? She looks amazing. Social media buzzes with admiration. Fans are stunned by her grace, her posture, her undeniable beauty that still lingers beneath the years. But more than that, what shocks people is her energy. Even in her 90s, she carries herself with vitality. Her sharp wit, legendary sense of humor, and calm confidence remain untouched by age. Angie has no interest in glamorizing old age, but she also refuses to hide from it. "I'm 93, she said with a smile in a rare 2023 interview. "I've lived. And I'm still here." She spends time with close friends, distant family, and former colleagues who still check in on her. She watches classic films, reads mystery novels, and walks around her garden on sunny afternoons. Occasionally, she grants interviews to journalists she trusts, always with honesty and grace. Angie may not dominate screens anymore, but she still commands attention simply by existing, authentic, radiant, and proud. One of the most striking elements of Angie Dickinson's late-life resurgence is the public's awe at her appearance. In a world obsessed with youth, plastic surgery, and cosmetic perfection, Angie stands out like a beacon of realness. "Try not to gasp when you see her today," headlines say. And truly, people do gasp, not from shock but admiration. Angie hasn't erased her age, she's embraced it. Her white hair flows like silver silk. Her eyes, once sultry and commanding, now radiate wisdom. Her face is lined, but those lines tell stories of laughter, pain, joy, and survival. Social media users marvel that someone from the golden age of Hollywood could age so naturally and still look so captivating. But it's not just about physical beauty, it's about presence. Angie Dickinson still has it. Younger fans who never saw Policewoman live or watched Rio Bravo in theaters are discovering her through YouTube clips and streaming platforms. They admire not only how she looks now but what she stood for then. Angie Dickinson in her 90s is having a quiet renaissance, not because of a comeback tour or a social media campaign, but because authenticity is timeless. Angie Dickinson may not have won an Oscar, but her legacy far exceeds any statue. Over the course of her 6-decade career, she accumulated numerous accolades that testify to her impact and artistry. In 1975, she won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a television series for Policewoman. She received multiple Emmy nominations and was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1987. These awards, while important, only scratch the surface of her influence. Film critics frequently list her performances in Rio Bravo, Dressed to Kill, and The Killers among the best of their decades. Directors like Brian De Palma and Howard Hawks credited her with elevating every scene she entered. Her co-stars, from John Wayne to Lee Marvin to Frank Sinatra, spoke highly of her skill and professionalism. But perhaps her most meaningful legacy lies in how she opened doors. Before Policewoman, women didn't lead primetime crime dramas. After her, they did. Cagney and Lacey, Law and Order, SVU, and The Closer all owe something to the groundwork Angie laid. Younger actresses, including Jodie Foster, Michelle Pfeiffer and Sharon Stone, have cited Angie as a role model. Not just for her acting, but for the choices she made as a woman, a mother, and a person unwilling to be defined by Hollywood's constraints. As Angie Dickinson enters her mid-90s, the reverence for her contributions has only grown. Unlike many celebrities whose fame fades with time, Angie's aura continues to expand. Why? Because she represents a rare blend of old-school glamour, undeniable talent, and quiet resilience. Culturally, she embodies a transitional figure. Angie bridged the golden age of Hollywood and modern television. She worked alongside icons like John Wayne, Frank Sinatra, and Ronald Reagan, but also headlined in a period when television was beginning to reflect real social change. That rare duality makes her significant in both cinematic and socio-political contexts. For modern audiences, especially younger women discovering her for the first time, Dickinson offers a study in contrast. Here was a woman who embraced her beauty but wasn't defined by it. A sex symbol who also played characters with intellect and emotional complexity. A public figure who lived privately. In a world that often demands constant reinvention, Angie Dickinson reminds us that consistency, class, and conviction can be just as powerful. Even in her later years, Angie has resisted writing a tell-all memoir or engaging in a flurry of media appearances. Her story has been told through her work, and perhaps that's what makes her even more fascinating today. There's still a sense of mystery, an allure that hasn't been overexposed. In today's world of oversharing, Angie Dickinson's choice to live quietly has only added to her legendary status. As fans look at her now, aged, elegant, and content, it's impossible not to gasp, not just at her enduring beauty, but at the life she's led. A life marked by success, sorrow, love, loss, and above all, the grace to navigate all of it on her own terms. At 93, Angie Dickinson still matters. Not because she insists on staying in the spotlight, but because she never had to. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring more fascinating stories like this one. Thanks for watching.